Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Living in the Limelight, an Anton Scholl and Friends podcast where we discuss music from the artist and fan perspective. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to another episode of Living in the Limelight. I'm your host, Anton Scholl, and today joining me is the metal goddess herself, Empire of Desire's own Tulin Howey. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's a Saturday. There's shows going on this weekend, so I'm excited. And yeah, staying on top of it, I suppose.
Good. Okay. Well, the first thing I do want to talk about, we kind of both have a similar situation here with our names. So I did want to talk about that real quick. What is the origin of your name? And, talk about the pronunciation, whatever, but what is the origin of your name? That's the first time I've ever heard this name before, kind of like mine in a sense, but go ahead. What do you got?
It's Turkish. So my parents are Turkish. They've passed, of course, but it's Turkish. So if you were to go to Turkey, you would hear that name. It's pretty common actually there. But if you look, there's a couple that's a umlauts above the U. So growing up, it was a little bit hard to, explain to people how to pronounce it. And even more so, like if you're out at a show and it's really loud and people ask what your name is or you're introducing yourself, it was so hard because, you can't really hear it. So it's Tulin, but if you were to really dig deep, it's Tulin. But I think that it's easier to let people know who I am by just saying it's Tulin. And I appreciate the fact that you've experienced that yourself with Anton, and we talked a little bit about that and where that name originated as well, correct?
Oh yeah, and I get what you're saying about when people like I'm a lead singer, bass player, and when I'm on stage and I hear people just coming up to me, and for some reason again, people tend to want to come up to you and have conversation with you when you're either in between sets or in between a song, but it's always on stage. They want to have a conversation with you when you're on stage. And I've had people say, "Hey man, what's your name?" And I'd be like, "Anton, we're talking Anton." And they're like, "What? Antoine? Anton? Anthon?" And I'm like, "No." And then would they end up with some name? They'll end up with what? They'll say like Tony. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Good enough.
That's it. Let's just move on.
Right. Call me whatever you want.
I get Tulin, Tulin, Julie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's Julie. Just call me Julie.
Yeah, at the end of the night, you got 12 people calling you 12 different names. It gets pretty funny.
Yeah.
All right, so we are here to talk about you in general, of course, okay. Because there's a lot more to you as a person than just Empire of Desire. So we really, when I had asked you to be on a podcast and you said yes, it's obviously one of those things I was very excited about because of your diversity and all of the stuff that you do, not only the music in general, but things related to health, things related to how to live, things related to covers, cover bands, the Alice Cooper thing. You know what I mean? And there's just so much going on, and you're such an interesting person that I had to get you on the show.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. So we have a lot. I don't even know exactly where to even start, but I do. Obviously, I will start with Empire of Desire because that's the biggest thing. But before I even go into that, I want to talk about you and Ken, because here's why. You guys are like the metal version, of Pat
Sonny and Cher.
No, well, it could be Sonny. I would say more of the Pat Benatar, Neil Giraldi thing. Neil Giraldi was they kind of met and then they became partners, and then they got married, and it was just all kind of a whole big thing. So give me the story way back of how you and Ken met, and then how it developed into Empire of Desire, or was it already Empire of Desire? So give us
Oh,
the
this is a
story.
great story. Yeah. So when we met, we were really young. I was 16. He was 18. We met at a party and we were both in our own bands already. We weren't even, looking to, find he wasn't looking to find a singer. I wasn't looking to find a guitarist. And we were already in our own bands. And I was in an all-female band called Metal Fox. So, back then it was just having a lot of fun. And so when we met each other at a party, it was kind of like love at first sight. We immediately connected because of music. He had his guitar there, and we were really excited. It's like, musicians meeting. And so when we first started going out, it wasn't really us looking to form a band. It was us, just having that common connection of music. And as time went by, we moved in together. I was going to college in Florida, Miami University. He went out there with me. And that is where we started to kind of explore the option of maybe being in a band together. We had a little tiny Casio keyboard. And I remember being in our apartment and we were really bored and we just started messing around, just like, hey, let's play on this keyboard. And I started singing. And we started being able to write really cool stuff. And after that, we moved back to Toledo because we're from Ohio. We moved back with the mission to get a band going. And this was early 90s. So we went back, we found our bass player, then we got married. And from there, we came out to Phoenix. And Phoenix, we came here saying, well, we're gonna like really launch this, So we started hitting places like the Mason Jar. We found drummers, and it kind of went from there. But the funny thing is Ken was so resistant to having a female vocalist at the time when we met. He was doing music like Van Halen and so forth. It took him a while to come around, but I think that the way that he wrote his guitar parts and wrote that part of the music and the way that I wrote the lyrics and the vocals, it just meshed. It made sense. It was something unique. So yeah, that's kind of our story, Wow. It was kind of like inverted that way. Yeah.
So then tell me about a writing session. How would you do, aside from that, when you guys are, just playing around on the Casio or doing things like that, the first real, attempt at a song that you wrote together, what was the process of doing that? Music first, lyrics first, or what was the, tell me the process of doing that particular thing?
There's actually a few processes. Sometimes I would write how I felt in journals, and I would write lyrics and I would just set it aside. And then I would hear something that we were playing, we just start having a jam session. So everybody would start jamming or he would be jamming. And I would hear something in the music that immediately would draw me back to lyrics that I'd already written. So I would partner that with his music. Or he would start to play the guitar and it would be really great. And I could actually hear what the song was trying to convey in terms of emotion. And I would just start writing lyrics on the spot, and relate it to something that I was thinking about or I had thought about maybe beforehand. And it came very easy to do. It was really cool that way. And I think that that's what we realized that very first moment with just that little Casio, that there was some sort of a pairing going on with the way that he wrote his music. So yeah, he would start jamming and I would scramble to find my lyrics or I would just start singing out the lyrics and hoping I would remember what I was singing. And back then it was just recording on a little cassette tape or something, and just a little recorder. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then now let's just take it into the studio. The first thing you did, when you put out an album, when was your first full length album?
I don't feel we actually ever had a full length album, but I believe it was back in, I'd say 96, 97. We came out with Chrome, and we were playing with a drummer, Halu. I believe that Kyle Beaver was our bassist at the time, and he was actually, Halu was doing the recording in his own home studio. So he was doing the recording, and we put those songs together. And what had happened is we got those songs put together, and the band kind of went in a different direction. Hal moved back to Ohio, and I found there was a little bit of space of time between that, releasing those songs. We didn't actually ever release it. We just kind of let it sit. And I think it was about 10 years later, I decided to get back into music because I took a little bit of time off. I resurrected that, and it was 5 songs, and we put it on Reverb Nation. And I just felt compelled that at the time that I got on Reverb Nation, I just felt compelled that that music shouldn't just sit there, you know, it needed to be heard. And so we put it out, and that's what happened. It was pretty crazy. Yeah.
So what was your studio experience like then? Because I know, I have to say, as a musician, you know, we'd play out a lot. We would do our thing. We would write a couple of songs, but then it came time to go into the studio. And for me, you know, much younger in years, no experience in the studio. And here I am trying to sing a song in the studio without playing an instrument. I'm listening into headphones, and then you have to sing, and it's a totally different world. So what was your first experience like in the studio, and how, you know, did it make you nervous, or did it compel you to do more? What was your experience?
Back the first few times, I just felt that confidence in what I was doing was really a big part of it. And I think I pulled that into more of the recent stuff too. Just going in with the confidence that what you're doing is very relaxed, very, you know, self-assured, and being able to put it out there and not be intimidated by the environment around you. So for instance, it just depends on the environment. It's kind of hard when you go into like a single room as a vocalist, and there's no one around you and nothing around you except padding, you know. That can be a little intimidating. So you kind of get lost in that, and then you start to overanalyze your vocal performance, and that can be a problem. And I have experienced that, and it did come through with the outcome. But the more I've come to realize is that when you are feeling confident, you're feeling like your voice is 100%, and you're feeling confident about the song itself and how you relate to that song, then your style's gonna come through. You're not gonna pull towards inside of like trying to hit the notes correctly. It's just gonna happen really well. So that's a big takeaway. And now, because everything is digital, back then when we first recorded, you had to get it right and within a certain amount of time, because it was expensive. It was reel to reel. So you had to get it right, and you got what you got. In the end, it was just, that's what you get. And now you can go back and tighten things up. You can adjust pitch. And I think I was one of those people I had the benefit of being able to pretty much hit pitch fairly decent without processing as much. But yeah, so it's a big difference between back then when I would record and what I do now, you know. So
right. And then, so the songs themselves, how do you come up with the thought, you know, the actual object of the song? Because some of your songs, I mean, when I look at the names of the songs, I want to listen. You know, it's that type of thing. When you hear, you know, Starve the Beast, you know, Corporate Greed, you know, when you hear names like that, AI, everyone's in AI, you know, but when you hear that, you're like, I got to hear that, you know, and you jump right on and you start listening. And so how did these stories come about? Because you are the main lyricist in the band, correct?
Some of my writing is based on what I see in news. Some of it is based on personal experience or the experience of someone else. And some of it is actually inspired by, say, a movie or a show, something that touched me emotionally. For instance, Corporate Greed was actually as a result of a friend of mine losing his job, and it wasn't anything that he had control over. It was just he got laid off or let go, and and it kind of like it reiterated something that I was seeing happen around me, where it just felt that corporations don't value their employees, and from there it really kind of developed into this mythical, supernatural, conspiracy theory kind of thing,
Sure.
because there is some conspiracy theory ideas in that song. So I like to take a thought and develop it into something that is universal, or maybe touches on darker, deeper subjects, paranormal, that kind of stuff. AI, for instance, is very relevant right now, but it was written years ago. And I think that started with a few movies about artificial intelligence and how they can take over the role of the human beings. And for instance, Matrix, was really huge part of the inspiration to that. So I just go with a concept, and AI was written, actually, interestingly enough. I believe I wrote the lyrics very quickly. It just came to me. The music was written first, and I was able to come up with the lyrics with that. Corporate Greed developed as we were jamming. There was some way that it was being played, and so the lyrics started coming to me as we started playing it. But there are like songs that are more based on emotions that we don't play as often because of the shows that we're doing with certain bands. We try to theme the songs that we select to go with the general audience and what they might be interested in. But there are some songs that are more ballady or more rock oriented as opposed to metal that we haven't been playing that often, Love's Insanity, for instance, is based on love and how it can make you crazy. And a lot of people can relate to that too, but you won't hear it as often as some of these other heavier songs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so speaking of that, then, in playing those songs live, what venues you've played in many venues in Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the best venues that you have experienced playing at?
Well, Joe's Grotto was one of our favorite places to play. I enjoy playing on a big stage. Of course, we need a lot of room to move around, but I like the intimacy and how people really love that location. Marquee is another one that I absolutely love. The sound is out of this world. There's actually two sound engineers going at one time, one off to the side and one in front stage. So the sound, hearing yourself just echoing out over that big space is incredible, and I loved it. And I just, seeing so many faces and a big, huge crowd is also really exhilarating, and being able to run up and down the stage. 44 is a newer venue. We went through the COVID period, and a lot of places ended up getting shut down because of that. Club Red was another one, and it just couldn't survive that,
Right.
that situation and that time. So 44 came around, and we're going to be playing there. That's been a huge game changer. And what's cool about it is I never been in there before, but we were one of the first bands to play there. In fact, I think we were like the first show that they did that was metal was us and some other bands. And it was really exciting. They had it a certain way, and they were actually able to remodel it and make it so that it was more of a venue that you could go to.
Right.
So there's been a few places, and there's been some shady places too that I think I could probably mention if you want me to.
I'm sure I know of those places. I'm sure I've been there and played those stages.
Yeah.
The very small stages or the
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I
So
could mention one if you want. It was just Krabby
sure,
Don's, and they're not there anymore.
yeah, okay,
I
go
liked
ahead.
it. Fun. It was an experience, but it was a little scary. It felt like you were under like these heat lamps, and the sound kept, like the breakers kept flipping, and
Oh wow.
the sound guy would be out smoking a cigarette. We're like, where'd he go? He's gonna fix this problem we're having, So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think we've all experienced that certainly.
Oh my
But
gosh.
some of these places now don't even have sound involved. They want the band to handle the sound. And so one thing that I wanted to ask you about, I know that you play all these other places that do have that, but I'm
Yes.
sure you have the experience of having to bring your own sound or bring your own PA
Yeah.
to some places. What do you feel is band responsibility versus club owner responsibility, or bar, could just be a bar, as far as draw? And I want you to answer that first, and then I'll explain, to everybody why this is such a big issue to band members. Go ahead.
Okay, so to me, it's we have to kind of delegate a little bit. We have to delegate responsibility, because not one aspect of that relationship can take on the complete responsibility. And as a band, we have so much already on our plate to provide a performance, to put together a great show, to pick some great songs, to set up our gear. It's really difficult for us to have full responsibility of also trying to get a draw. It's just not possible, time-wise and energy-wise, to do it all. But we still feel like it's exciting, and it's one way to get our fans, to a venue. So we have a built-in fan base, and we want to bring those fans to a club or a venue. But the venue also has their own group of people that will go there regardless of who's playing. So it's an effort on both parts. Now, with promoters that are putting together shows, sometimes a promoter will just, put together a poster, put the bands on, and then they step back and we don't see anything. And it's hard enough as it is, to get people to show up. So I like to look at it this way. If you are, say, a vendor of, say, a grocery store, and you're selling a product, the grocery store has responsibilities to keep their clients, their customers coming. Vendors also can show on their website or wherever they are, putting their product out there, where to go to find their product. So it's the best relationship with vendors and people who provide the environment is to work together in the best way they possibly can to create success. And the success is getting people to find your location, find what's there in your location and what you're going to provide, and making that experience of when they walk in the door as amazing as possible. So I think that if one falls out, you're getting half, you're not giving it 100%. So I try to find people who are going to, do their share, and I will put in my share. So it's responsibility on both to make it a success. That's the answer.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that. And the reason I say that is because, I get both sides. Okay. A businessman on one side, I know bar owners, and of course, being in a band and playing in some of these bars, I get it. But I've had so many strange experiences, like with bands who would just, hey, you're going to pay me. Now, you don't get paid a lot of money. I think a lot of people may not know that. But, bands are not getting paid a boatload of money to be out there and perform. If you're lucky, you're going to make a couple $100, but anyway, when a bar owner decides that, hey, I want you to play, and I'm going to pay you this amount of money, but that amount of money means I do need you to draw some people in. But then what happens is there's 5 people in the bar.
Yeah.
And now
that's right.
the band is then saying, hey, you hired me to play. I'm playing and I'm going to play in front of these 5 people or whatever it is. You're going to pay me. And that's it. It's not my responsibility to get people in here. I'm the entertainment. But from the bar owner's standpoint, it's, well, I'm paying you that money because I need patrons to come into my bar. You know, it helps you as a band if people like you. But it also, I don't think that bands realize that you got to be careful of your reputation when you do something like that. You know what I mean? So there's so much going on there. And this particular podcast is what we talk about a lot, is views from the musician's perspective. And we also have other people on from the fans' perspective that aren't musicians at all. And then we hear what they want to hear and what they expect from, you know, from bands to play out there. So that's kind of the interesting twist in there, is like, you know, you have a great attitude and you have that towards that. You understand the bar is there to try to make some money, and you're being hired to do a job. And that's, you know, I think that's great. And yes, 50-50. The bar's got to do something to promote. The band definitely have to do something to promote. And I think that's great. And then, of course, just obviously for all those listening out here, you know, we need to support our local musicians and to get out there. You know, I don't think they realize what it costs for you to be playing there.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get that. It does. It can be really difficult. I mean, overhead for any club or any bar is pretty substantial, because they're hiring people also. They're hiring the bartenders, they're hiring the door, they got to pay the rent, you know, they got to pay for fees and licenses. It could be really expensive. And I think that if you are someone who has seen both sides, it's easier. Now, if a person hasn't walked that or hasn't ever, you know, had a business, they may not understand, and it's hard to express to someone who's never experienced it why it's so expensive to throw a show together or put together a show. And so a club owner is got all that on the line. So they have to be selective about how they're going to get people in the door. And I totally get it. You know, they want a band that's going to be able to hold their own and bring that in there. Sometimes it's dumb luck, though. Sometimes there's a bigger show going on the same night and we didn't even know it. That's happened before. And it's like, oh my God, everybody's going to this other show. What are we going to do? You know, and that's brutal. That can be really brutal. Right. So, you know, you just have to be able to relate and to try to do the best that you can do. You can't control what other people do in a lot of situations. Right. You can try your best to align with people who have the same goals as much as you can. But in the end, you can't let that dissuade you. As a musician, I can't let what other people do stop me from doing the best that I possibly can. And when there's a challenge, like for instance, if I know that there's a show coming up and all of a sudden now there's a bigger show that's on top of it, what am I going to do? I know that it's going to be a challenge. Right. So I have to start promoting even more. I might have to maybe give a freebie away, doing, you know, these interviews and things. It's just, to me, it's what can I control and what can I do better to make this a success? And what's a success? Success, the amount of money that I make, or is success doing the best I can all the way up until I'm up on stage? That to me is the success. And if somebody has an issue with that, well, if you're already doing your best, then how can I do better? You know, so it's that's the thing. So yeah. Well,
I think as us as musicians, we know that money is not the measure of success.
Correct.
That's a given. Yeah, and I think it's also important that the bands realize that you've got to have a relationship with the establishment owner. Yes. You know, because there are going to be times where things may not be so good, you know, and maybe you're not going to draw 100 people, or maybe you're not going to draw the right amount of people. But then again, the next time you may draw a ton of people, and that person, because you have that relationship, They'll give you a little bit more money this time, a little less money, and sometimes a little more money. But what I tend to see is certain bands who go out there and just bash the bars because of that. And that's where I think the bands really have got to get together with the bar owners, with the establishment owners, and establish that relationship. I think that that's important.
Correct. Now that brings me to a point, because you were saying something. We're in the best case scenario, we have venue or bar owners who want to work with the bands, who understand this relationship that we're talking about. On the other hand, we have a situation where a band is responsible for selling tickets. And instead of actually selling the tickets, they pay off the bar saying they sold tickets, and they never did. They gave them away, and which is fine. But what that's doing is it's making it really more difficult to have a genuine, authentic turnout. Do you know what I'm saying? And creating values for the show. And it makes it more difficult for bands to actually sell tickets, and these tickets, the money's not 100% coming to us. It's being split in some way or fashion. It might be going 100% to the venue. And the way that we actually may make money, if we want to, is to sell merchandise or that kind of stuff, or sell our records and things. That might be the ultimate goal. But it's like a cancer to me for people to be giving away tickets and paying off the bar to get a good slot or get a good show. I don't think that that's a very smart way to promote yourself. I mean, it might be in the beginning. You might have to do that sometimes to get into like a big venue, but to do it all the time, it's hard. It makes it harder for everybody, so.
Well, let me explain that, because I did do a podcast on this before, and I want to make sure again that people listening to this one understand what we're talking about. So there's a term out there called pay to play, and it's really, fans may not understand what that is, but certainly we do. And bottom line is that you go to a venue, they give you 100 tickets. They say, look, sell these tickets. The ticket price is $12. You need to pay me $10 per ticket. Okay. So you have to give me $1,000. No matter what you do, you're giving me $1,000. I don't care. I don't want tickets back. You're giving me $1,000 to play here. Now, if you sell them all at the $12 price, okay, your band's making 200, or, so it depends on how you look at it, on how much you want to sell it for. So, but yes, what happens is usually in these type of shows, there may be 3 to 4 bands, maybe 5 bands playing at once in one night. So a lot of the band members are like, look, I want to play on that stage. It's a great stage. They got great sound. It's going to be a great opportunity for us. And I don't want to sell these tickets. I'm just going to take $1,000 out of my pocket. I'm going to give it to the venue, and then we're going to play, and I'm just going to give the tickets away. And if people show up, they show up. Well, we both know 9 out of 10 people aren't going to show up when you give them those tickets, right? One, they have nothing vested in it. They didn't pay. So they're not going to show up. Okay. So, and unfortunately, the thought process is there's 3-4 other bands there. We're going to get their fans. And then you go into these places and there's 15 people sitting there. All of the bands pretty much did the same thing, and the establishment's happy. Hey, they made their $5,000, they're good to go. But so that's what that term is. So I agree with you. I think that, hey, you got to sell these tickets. You got to be out there doing that. Whether you want to make a profit on it or not is entirely up to you. But I have noticed that if you sell them, people are vested. They got that money into it, and they're going to go. If you give them away, you're probably not going to see them.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of depressing, though. I mean, to think that if for instance, like you're actually going to the whiskey, for instance, in California. I mean, I get that. It is kind of an experiential investment, and in that situation, people are going to be there. They're going to be there whether, you sell tickets or not. They're going to show up. So in that situation, that to me is an investment into your music. That's an investment into getting, that in your resume that you played there, and you will find new fans. You'll get new fans that way.
Right.
But on the other hand, to keep doing that and to do it, to the point to where it's actually hurting you in the long run, it lends to your belief in your music. It lends to, why would I have to give that ticket away, or why would I have to pay to play when I know that the music that we're creating is good? And if your music is good, sell that music genuinely, get people out there because they want to see you.
Right.
That to me is the difference, so it's different.
Yeah.
That way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to something that I think is very interesting, because obviously Empire of Desire has become a well-known original band. And then all of a sudden I see that you are that you were fronting an Alice Cooper tribute.
Yeah.
Now I think everybody knows that, Scott Rowe was out there doing that for some 30
yeah.
years or something like that, I believe, right? How did that come about? Because that is obviously a bit of a change, you know. So how did that come about?
He passed the torch he passed the garbage can of props to me.
He wanted
to embrace doing original music, and he no longer, I think that he did everything he possibly could, and every hurdle to, he just did it all with Alice Cooper. And he got to the point where do I go from here? So he wanted to do his original music with Red Brummed. And he decided, well, who can I pass this torch on to? And I was the one, I guess, something in the way that I sang, or the way I look, because when I put the makeup on, it always scares me when I see pictures of myself. I think there was one where my eyes are like this. I kind of think I was a cross between Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne in that picture. It was just actually intimidating, holding a snake, It was actually, for me, a great, and it has been so great, because I personally did not grow up listening to Alice Cooper. Like record wise, and being familiar with his background and the story behind Alice Cooper. So when Scott asked me to do this, I started doing my research, and I totally fell in love with the music. I was like, this is great music. I love Alice Cooper now. And it's such a challenge. Vocally, I had to do some adjusting as far as how to sing songs. I had to learn some new ways of singing. I had to find a way to not only try to sound like him, but still maintain my originality, because it's not possible to sound exactly like him as far as his voice goes. And the stage presence was also a big part of it. Learning how Scott performed, not just Alice Cooper, how he performed, but how Scott put together his show. So when we had our practices, our rehearsals, and we got everybody together, we only had maybe 1 or 2 rehearsals before the big show. And we had to get a lot in on those. And Scott was there as the director, saying, okay, you need to now point to the audience and say these lines, and you have to move your hands in a certain way or walk a certain way. And he grabbed me and he pulled me around and like, do it this way. I'm like, oh my gosh, the pressure is on, and when we finally did the show, it was stepping into character. So that's way different than being myself. It's being someone else and stepping into character. And it was wonderful. I loved it. I loved looking out and seeing fans and their expectations, and hoping I could fit his shoes, in a little bit of what he's done with Alice Cooper. Yeah.
Well, and I got to say, I got to give a shout out to Scott anyway, just because, Scott is one of the coolest people I've met. I've done a couple of shows for him, like up at Gypsies, things like that. But what he's done over the years, and now recently just for musicians alone, big shout out to Scott. So
He is a
I'm hoping to get him
machine.
on the show. I hope I can
Yeah.
get him on the show. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah. So also the things that you do then outside of it, and you know what, I got to tell you, this is one of the podcasts, by the way, a little side note, one of the podcasts, by the way, where I feel like I can be talking to you for hours and hours. So, you know, I would
Yeah.
love to have the ability to do this again with you, you know, and talk about different things.
Absolutely.
But I do want to talk about the things that you do outside. Okay, you have a
Yes.
website, so
Mhm.
I want to talk about that because some of the things that you were doing really intrigued me in regards to just health alone,
Oh, yes.
uh, and you know some of the things you do. And I don't know if you call it holistic
It is
in
holistic.
general.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
but describe what you do and then give out the website. Let's talk about that because that's something I think a lot of people should know about.
Okay. So my background, besides music, is holistic wellness. I actually went to school for exercise science and physiology. I went to school for energy work, which is energy medicine, like Asian body work, acupressure, that kind of thing. I went to school for that stuff. And for 25 years, I've worked in a natural grocer. I worked at Sprouts, I worked at Arizona Health Foods. And the reason I got those jobs was based on the fact that I noticed I had some difficulty or some challenges while I was a musician. And it led me to want to explore things like, well, things like death and what happens after we die and how do we promote health and things. How can I avoid this challenge before? And I've always been into nature. I've always been into the natural world. And so it kind of really meshed together well when I started exploring holistic wellness because it is a more natural way of doing things. It's more in tune to, following the rhythm of our lives and seeing the body mind connection. So let me backtrack a little bit. As a musician, I'm around a lot of, situations where there's addiction. There is a lot of being an artist. You tend to be very sensitive. So there's a lot of turmoil and drama and things that you deal with. And we can become sick over that. We can get really sick. So in my personal experience, I had a problem with drinking, and that drinking was a way for me to cope with the stress of my life. And so I've always been into holistic wellness, but here I am, drinking as well. And so to overcome that drinking, I had to find ways to deal with my mind and what was going on in my head. And so I have a platform that actually covers a lot of that. And, I'm going to put together some basic videos of my story and what got me there. But my platform is called Living the Healthy Rockstar Lifestyle. And that is a 5-part formula. It deals with bad habits and addictions. It deals with eating healthy. And I'm a firm believer of plant-based nutrition. I've been doing a lot of research on that. I'm vegan myself. I found health benefits to being vegan. But I don't expect people to completely go vegan, but I am a firm believer of plant-based nutrition and how we can improve our health because we're athletes on the stage. We are, we're using our bodies for music. So our bodies have to be healthy for us to create our music, correct? So
Yeah,
that's the other part.
sure.
Having a confident approach to our music, mindset. Um, and then of course the eating, you have to have the fitness part in there too. Being able to create goals is the other part. So there's actually 5 parts. Did I mention? I think that was 5.
Yeah, yeah,
but
you did.
but yeah, so I'm putting this together, and my website is called metalgoddessstudios.com. I do sell products on that website, not just merch for my band and merch for musicians, but also things like singing bowls and essential oils and herbs and things like that, I found to be very useful in my career as a nutrition person. it started out with vitamins, but that's not enough. We got to get into the food part of it. So there's a lot of parts to it. And yeah, I hope people come out to my website, because I think that maybe, it might be just poking around and looking at, some of the blogs that I have on there, or you may want to get some essential oils or some herbs, that like some teas that can help you with like soothe your throat. Or it might be full on, like, I don't know what to do with my career, or I don't know how to break this bad habit. I'll be coaching people one-on-one come May. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, great. Yeah. And that sounds good. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are looking for stuff like that, because, they don't realize that the rock and roll lifestyle, I mean, if you're playing, it takes a lot out of you. And, it's not like you just wake up in the morning and show up at a show and start playing. It just never seems to work that way. There's always something going on. If you're doing an hour set, that hour set takes 8 to 10 hours out of your day, and that's not realized by a lot of people. So yeah, I think a lot of people would appreciate what you're doing, and hopefully a lot of people will get a hold of you to do that, because I think it's important. And as I realize, as I get older, health becomes the big issue. You
Yes,
think you're
absolutely.
invincible. I think, at what age, I think up until probably our early 20s, we thought we were totally invincible and we're going to rule the world with our health. And then all of a sudden, things start happening. So
That's correct.
we know how important that is. So
Yes.
good luck on that. Also, you are on Facebook. You are on what is you also
Instagram.
do,
I've got Instagram as well.
right? Okay.
I do have
You're also
TikTok.
Spotify.
Yep.
You got
Yes.
your music is on Spotify.
Yes, we have all our music on Spotify, iTunes as well. So.
And I would say make sure that people are looking at Empire of Dezire with a Z.
That's correct. Because there is another band.
Yeah, there's someone who spells it with an S, but we won't look at them. We want Empire of Dezire with a Z. And honestly, I want to thank you for being here. I would love to have you on again, because I do feel like we got so much more to talk about.
Oh my goodness.
And
Thank you so much, Anton.
Yes, a lot of it has to do with, just the things that you're doing outside of music, whether it be cover bands or whether it be Empire of Dezire in general. But, we appreciate everything that you do out there, and now appreciate even more that you're really trying to help people, get healthy, get on the right track.
Absolutely.
And they should definitely go in and take a look at your website. So again, thank you for joining us. And for all of you out there living in the Limelight podcast, tune in to us every week. And we got a bunch of great guests coming up. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our Living in the Limelight podcast with your host, Anton Scholl. Please feel free to comment, like, follow, share, and subscribe. And also add us to your playlist on your favorite streaming sites. Thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you again next week.